to this first webinar, English and French. We're very happy that we have so many participants in this webinar. This is the first webinar of a series up to the statutory meetings, which is a commitment we have taken, and also based on experience we have had towards the previous statutory meetings, that this is a quite good way in a very informal manner to keep you updated where we stand. Today's webinar is concentrating on where we currently stand in the preparations of the international conference. We have already had some consultations with national societies and some others, which you will hear about it, with whom we have consulted and what the results of these consultations were. But also we would like to share with you our current thinking, and hopefully this is not only a one-way conversations. We encourage you to come in and also to raise questions, bring us comments and feedback. You can do this in two ways. You can either write in the conversation list here, and we can read then out the question, or if you would like to say something, please write to us that you would have a question and that you would like to talk, and then we will give you the floor. However, do not forget to unmute your microphone. That is quite essential, and then you can speak, and after this please mute your microphone. This is the invitation to also everyone, please keep your microphones muted. I don't know whether you can see us. I don't know whether the camera is on. No, it's not, but that is not the most important, although now it's also the camera is on and you can see us. So technology is not always that easy. I'm not alone here. Here to my right side is Franz from the ICRC, who is the co-chair with me together of the Joint Organizing Committee. And then we have also other people in the room. We have Anka, we have Celine, we have Camilla, and we have Vittoria, and also Eva, who is responsible for all the technical part, and you can imagine she was quite active in the last 10 minutes to get us all online here and with tone, and also now with picture. So a very good morning to everyone, and Franz, I will hand over to you for...
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and I will now shortly, as a little bit of a recap, just mention the various objectives the international conference has, as we're just still at the beginning of the entire process. So objective 1, contribute to respect for and development of IHL, as mentioned in the movement statutes, followed by an objective 2, which is quite complementary to the first one. That means that it's also about the wider legal framework, but then also related policies that should be or could be developed in the frame of such a conference. Of course, a general objective 3, is to have a contribution to the global humanitarian agenda, and there probably with a specific focus on the big added value of the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement in the humanitarian world. And I think this is pretty much an objective that concerns us as an entire movement. Of course, the objective 4 is some sort of a byproduct of an international conference, but as you well know, I think it's an ideal place to foster relationships, alliances within the movement, to engage about partnership, about common programs, but beyond actually the internal relationships, it should be also more and more an occasion where I think the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement components engage with states, of course, but then also with external actors that should increasingly also participate in such an international conference. And we can go to the next slide, which is a bit of a consequence of former also international conferences and conference where we concluded, and also in a lessons learned process, that of course we want to maintain a high engagement of members and observers. I think this is the key success factor for an international conference, but then also maybe more hardware related, to have less resolutions, not to overwhelm participants in this international conference, and not the drafting committee neither, to have as much as possible concrete policy advancements that are then also followed up in the aftermath of the international conference. It's very important that we don't produce, let's say, conclusions that land in a drawer, but that really make a difference over time. The exploratory elements are an important trait, and I think very much triggered about past activities and very recently the RC2 forum, which clearly showed there is a need and really a consensus that these exploratory elements that are looking future looking are an important element of such a conference. We have to be more focused, which is maybe also a consequence then of less resolutions and concrete policy advancements. They're very strongly linked. A consequence might also be the high-level participation. The more interesting, the more momentum that can be created around the conference will also trigger then the participation. The wow factor is certainly also a consequence of all this, and a common effort to really bring in something that is very special to this conference. Should be easy to navigate, and I think we conclude to show a unified movement. I think it's about the movement. We should there really show to ourselves, to the states, to the world, that the movement has a joint mandate, an important, let's say, mandate worldwide related to humanitarian action. Thank you very much. That for the time being, I hand to Anka about
for the wow factor.
For the wow factor, yeah, exactly.
To Anka and Vittoria, and good morning, good morning everybody from us as well. It's good to be back online, live with all of you. I see colleagues and from the Federation in the field, and then colleagues from the National Society. So good morning, good afternoon to everybody. To be a bit more concrete on and to zoom in into what Frank and Franz were already presenting. We had so far several opportunities for consulting with the national societies and also with the states, and this is what Vittoria and I will briefly present to you now, because we understand from the national societies, especially that that this is one element that we need to strengthen in the preparation from the conference, to debrief with you, or rather to brief you on what we're going to talk to the states, and then to debrief you from those meetings. And I think it's equally important that everybody has an overview of also what the other national societies have told us in different meetings or constellations that we've talked to. And we've had we had the opportunity to talk to the legal advisors of national societies in Europe, so the European Legal Support Group. Then we were talking to the leadership of European national societies in the European Conference. We've had bilateral discussions with many national societies, as no such opportunity we had for a big meeting in Africa or the Americas or Asia Pacific yet. But Camila will go more in depth into other opportunities that we have to engage with you. So far, what we've heard briefly from national societies is that content-wise, because this is why we say content is one factor of success for the international conference. So content-wise, substance-wise, what we understand is that less is more. National societies have highlighted that we should aim for concrete results specific to the international conference. Obviously, one of them would be focused around IHL. Then we've heard that states should also be we should produce topics that are also very interesting for the states and where states can see a win, such as the sexual and gender-based violence in the past conference. We should show a unified movement, so no more 50% ICRC topics and 50% federation topics, as it might happen. Then we understood that we should move on and touch on the topics of pandemics, then obviously humanitarian aid in armed conflict. We should look at the localization agenda and how to feature it on the agenda. Then another point would be to look at how we can display the anniversaries, the two anniversaries, the Federation 100-year anniversary, and then the 70 years of the Geneva Conventions, and how to bring that in a dialogue with states. So topics would be health in, as I was saying, health in terms of pandemics, but also universal health coverage, restoring family links and the issue of protection, climate change, fundraising and resource mobilization, movements, reputational risks, and the issue of accountability and linking it with integrity, cyber issues and technology. So this would be in terms of substance. Now, as you can see on the slide, there is a conference, or in our view, the conference is successful not only if we look at the substance, but also if we look at how we design it, so how we talk about these topics, and then also how do we prepare, because what is important in this conference is that people are very well prepared ahead of time, and then those 3 days are really used for live debates as much as we can, and then really finalizing the concrete outcomes in resolutions. In terms of design, what we heard from you, and Victoria will go on to discuss what we've heard from the states. We need less parallel events. Design should be simple and accessible, and we should strengthen the participation of external stakeholders. In terms of engagement or preparation, we should ensure that the voices of beneficiaries and communities are much more reflected in the discussions of the conference, that we use formal and informal networks to strengthen the engagement with national societies. And then, of course, we had the concrete proposal to actually have a preparatory meeting between the national societies and states before the international conference, which should make the negotiations in the drafting committee a bit lighter during those 3 days. Now, I hand over to Victoria to brief us on the permanent missions briefing that we held on the 23rd of March.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So exactly as Anka has introduced, parallelly to the engagement with national society, we already started we kick off the dialogue with states, and the first kind of engagement was through a permanent mission briefing that was held in the 23rd of March. There was a high degree of attendance with approximately 70 representatives of national society, states, Geneva-based missions, mostly at working level. So we had mostly humanitarian and legal advisors. There were also some participants that were observers. So we had participants from the European delegation to the UN here in Geneva. This is part of one track of engagement with states, of course, at more technical level, and it will be complemented by a second track at more political level with a group of ambassadors meeting that will come at a later stage. So the aim of this first permanent mission briefing was really to kickstart this dialogue with states on the preparatory process of the conference, to get a sense from them on how they want to be more engaged and how we can increase the active participation and involvement in the preparatory process of the conference, and also to try to establish a more collaborative and participatory approach. And actually, that was also reflected in the way the meeting, the permanent mission briefing was conducted, because it was really based on small informal working groups where our co-chairs asked three questions. They were basically looking at expectations from state. What do they expect from us? How they envisage a successful and relevant multilateral conference, and especially in terms of design and substance. And in terms of feedback, first of all, we have to say that the majority of people who attended that meeting were people who were, maybe surprisingly for us, had already participated to the 32nd conference in 2015. And that means that they were not completely new to the statutory meetings. Of course, that was very helpful for certain reason, but it maybe didn't give us that kind of fresh, high and fresh perspective that we were also looking for in terms of innovative ideas. But anyway, their feedback was really relevant for us. And of course, also as what Anka said, in terms of substance, also what they pointed out was to have a more focused and streamlined agenda, so with less resolution, with a less overburdened drafting committee, and avoiding an overloaded schedule. And also then a suggestion was to establish some kind of informal preparatory committee, especially for the resolution process. In terms of communication, they also request us to engage earlier, and engage more regularly, and also to establish contact with focal points, and maybe to go beyond Geneva level and reach more at capital level as well. In terms of outcomes, especially, again, building a bit on the same direction of national societies, was about aiming at having concrete outcomes specific to the conference and that are achievable and especially measurable. And then also they suggested that to build on and continue to implement the practice of pledges. And I think more or less this was the main feedback that we got so far. There will be other permanent mission briefing in the months to come. And at the end of 2018, already the first group of ambassador meeting, but we will come back with this at a later stage.
Thank you very much, Vittoria and Anka. At this stage, I would like to ask whether there is any questions or anything. Please, if you would like to raise a question on this areas, this is the chance. I can see there is one question from Laura coming in, or a comment. So while we wait till the question is typed in, we will go also on the next part. And also Daniela is asking a question. So the question is, I don't know whether you can all see the question. There is a question is, are there already concrete ideas on how to make... Where is now this question? Can we keep this question up, please? Okay. So the question is, are there already concrete ideas on how to make the resolutions more concrete and measurable? So does anybody have a good answer? This is a very good question. I think that is something we are grappling with. We are in discussions with our file holders, and what we would like to do is we would like to be more concrete, and also in terms of when we are having a resolution, because I think that is where it all starts. A resolution is not always just there because we would like to have a resolution. So it starts off really probing whether we need a resolution. And secondly, we will put up some criteria together of whether we need a resolution and how the resolution should look like. However, we all know that resolutions in the international area, when they're then negotiated, will be always being watered down or can also get less concrete. That is something which is in the process. We are also considering to be earlier with the resolutions, even earlier than we did in the last years, including also potentially to have a PrepCom next year in July. This would be the first time where we will bring national societies and governments together for a preparatory meeting of 1 or 2 days here in Geneva to negotiate and to discuss already the resolutions, and not only to have a consultation around resolution, but already to have an early on discussions. And we hope that all this will be leading to a more concrete resolution. There's another question coming. I see that there are some questions about sound. I don't know whether this is resolved on the French channel.
Daniela,
French is okay.
So there's, can we stop? Daniela's asking, or has a comment about content. Anka mentioned several themes, plus there are following themes from the 32nd International Conference and COD. Is there a list with all the must-haves? Yes, there is a list. We're going to present in a minute what we're currently considering for the International Conference. But we note that this must-have list we will potentially we can also share at some point. I think that is a good idea to everyone. But we will also present to you soon in terms of what we have made out of this at this stage in this area.
I think John Entwistle had also a good question about the cap on the number of resolutions, and I think this is also an excellent question. We have at this very stage not decided about the cap on the number of resolutions, but very clearly having less resolutions than before. But it's quite early in the exercise at this stage to take such decisions. But there should clearly be less and more prepared resolutions than during the last conference.
Yeah, some people are saying 5 would be good, but I don't either think that we can now make a cap. If it's 6 resolutions which we need, it's going to be 6. But we had last time, I think we had 11 resolutions in 3 days. That was definitely too much. This is something we will need to work on. We hope through this criteria that we can be more clear about how many resolutions are. We also think about to have resolutions which are probably broader and capture various thematics under one umbrella. So we are considering various options about how to limit. On the other hand, we have to see this is an only every 4 years event, and demand can be very quick, and we should be not too categorical. It is rather about what needs to be done rather than now come up with a fixed number on this. Franz, you want to?
No, I think that's exactly as it is. Nothing to add.
Good. So let's continue. If we can go on, and because what we are presenting you now is a little bit of where we currently stand after these consultations. Based also on the outcomes of the last Council of Delegates, also very important, not to be forgotten, the RC2 forum, which was a very big stepping stone last time in terms of preparing or generating potential themes and areas of interest for this international conference. And as you can see, this we already have taken up. So what you can see now is the overall structure we consider at the international conference. So we hope that this conference, or the proposal is that this conference will be a very much future-oriented, forward-looking international conference. The theme is what we are currently having here is facing tomorrow's humanitarian challenges. This is not the theme which you will see at the end, but this is an indicator about which direction the overall theme of the conference will be. We might have something different here. We might have something of humanity 4.0. We are going to look into this, how and where this theme can capture this forward-looking, this future-oriented area about how we are going to discuss what are the areas, what are the areas we need to discuss at this international conference for the future. Under this general theme, we will have problem statements about what are the issues which we currently see, which are now, but also which might come up in the future. What are threats to our work? What are the threats to human mankind? And then in various areas we would like to tackle them and discuss what can we do. And this is what you see in these 3 blocks, which we would like to tackle about how can we respond to these humanitarian challenges in the future. And there we see currently 3 main areas, which we will go a little bit more in detail. And these 3 areas are tomorrow's humanitarian prevention and response, then the area of age of cyber and technology, and the trust in humanitarianism. You can also see on the right-hand side 2 areas where we have to do some matters. That is the follow-up of the last international conference, where we have several resolutions which required follow-up. So we will have this in one or the other area and design. And then there might be other IHL matters which do not necessarily fit under the future-oriented area, because, as you know, one of the key objectives of this international conference are IHL is IHL, and we will need to accommodate this part as well. So what is in these various areas here? And Franz and I, we will talk you now through this. And Franz, I will start a little bit with tomorrow's humanitarian prevention and response. One block, and all I'm saying now are just current ideas. And these current ideas will be put into a concept note, and if approved by the Standing Commission, will be shared with you for further input. But we also are encouraging you already to provide us now input, and today and in the next days. So the first block under humanitarian prevention and response is the question about health. Access to health, it's around how national societies can be part under governmental response to pandemics and other humanitarian health needs. How can we be better set up as in the health sector between governments and national societies and the various components of the movements in order to really tackle the area of the framework of the universal health coverage in the various aspects. The second block of the humanitarian response will be the question around climate change and environmental realities. Here we would like to tackle questions around what is the contribution of national societies in the implementation of the Paris Agreement. How can we be part of better be in the area of mitigation, but also in the area of adaptation. Governments have in the Paris Declaration decided on various areas about how to tackle this, and there is a discussion about what does this mean for the humanitarian sector. What can national societies contribute to these areas? How can we pair up here as partners, and also governments can rely on national societies to be a good partners. Part of this also discussion is for sure the discussion around disaster risk reduction, disaster laws, all those areas we would like to discuss under this block, and the conference will provide an excellent opportunity to strengthen the role and the contribution of the movement in reducing the humanitarian impacts of climate change and being better prepared in these areas, not only on the technical side but also on the legal side. The third block is around urban vulnerabilities, and here it is very specific about how can we be better set up respond to the urban vulnerabilities? How can we improve the individual and collective capacity to respond to the humanitarian challenges in urban areas? And also to engage in urban planning and all what is all around it, where national societies, some of them are already working with governments or with their communities, and also bring this forward in this area of policy making of the international conference. And I will hand over now to Franz to add probably some things about urban violence and urban warfare, and then also to lead us through the other two blocks.
Thank you very much, Frank. And as you outlined, Frank, before, I think these are really ideas at this very stage, and also the forthcoming consultation and engagement activities should really be there to gauge important matters that would enter a bit in this frame as it was proposed. When we're talking about urban vulnerabilities, it is of course all this, and I think the environmental realities are interconnected also with urban. What is a very let's say strong focus that should be taken is also the IHL matter related to urban vulnerabilities. The use of explosive weapons in populated areas will certainly be a domain that will have to be looked into, maybe even the aspect and related also of autonomous weapons as well, and to a certain extent also the social criteria in an urban setting that also can create violence amongst, for example, young people, etc., operating in gangs that create some sort of warlike situations is also an urban reality. The healthcare in danger that will be probably also could be covered under the health topic has certainly also a very strong relation to the cities, as when let's say violence is committed in cities, it's very, very strongly about public services and the interruption of public services, as the coping mechanisms are not so strong in urban settings. So this domain will be looked into under the urban vulnerabilities. The age of cyber and technology is, let's say, a subtrack that is, of course, very future related, and that could be an aspect also on how we look at certain topics, but also per se there are certainly evolutions that we have to have on the radar, that we have to look into, and this is also IHL related to a certain extent about cyber warfare. There are certainly thinking around that topic that has to be done. There is already very solid work going on, and some of you are probably part of that around the RFL policy that will be hopefully adopted at the next international conference, but also there the new way of working around this need and this mandate of RFL, and there is a new dynamism that has been created around that, but also very much based on new technologies. I think there are other topics there as well that are related also to innovation, and I think it's a bit the consequence also of the RC2 forum there to have also a special focus without now falling into gadgets. But I mean, we are at the brink of a new time, and I think this should also be then encompassed by this chapter. Trust in humanitarianism is a wide, let's say, a topic, a relatively wide topic, but should bear also in focus that it is about recognizing, respecting, and let's say strengthening national actors as well, as we have very strongly committed to. It's about risk sharing, integrity, emblem protection, community engagement, accountability. It's also the way how we want to work, the how, and how we want to work together. So also there, I think a very important pillar of the international conference. As Frank mentioned, there will be quite some follow-up items of related to the 32nd international conference that are partially already there in the future looking topics, but partially there will be just the follow-up items of the 32nd International Conference. There will be also other IHL matters that are now not specifically future-related, partially also follow-up like the action plan. But then there is also other IHL matters around commentaries that will be hopefully presented, and also the challenges report that is not very much linked to the main let's say string of topics presented. I would leave it here for the time being.
Yeah, thank you, Franz. And probably just to add a couple of 2 or 3 words. I think as we really want to have this international conference looking into the age of the 4th industrial revolution, all those things which are going on, there might be coming other areas up which will fit under these areas. I can, when we talk about, and I don't know whether this will be rather under trust and humanitarianism or under the age of cyber and technology, new financing models, but also how do we work together here with states in these areas. So this is exactly where we are still now counting also on you and in the engagement sessions which we're going to have in future, about really to break down and define what the exact themes are and the topics which are under these main 3 tracks which we are going to have. We are also not quite clear yet what areas will be in which design. There might be some of these areas which will be in resolutions, some of them will be in commissions, but also commissions can be very different, very interactive. So all these questions about how we are designing these various topics is not yet confirmed and will be part of it once we know exactly what we do, and also consultations with national societies. Mm. And one of the questions about the follow-up, which is very prominent, but I don't want to go now too much in detail, is for sure the question about the compliance, which was at the last international conference. But I think this will deserve at some point a session on its own. There is quite, as you know, this is a state-run process at the moment. We have, together with the ICRC, Federation and ICRC, we have provided you with some information on this, and we will continue to provide you with more information also in very due course about where we currently stand with this track. Are there any questions about this proposal, which we are intending to put into a very first concept note to be approved by the Standing Commission, who is the owner of the conference, so to say, and to then to submit to all conference participants, to states and to all national societies, and to engage with you then into a more formal consultation process. I can see there's already the first question coming up. There is the question from Jane Munro from Australia. Is migration flagged as a potential topic? If so, which pillar to use this as falling under? Good question. Yes, migration will for sure at some point be part of it. And I think it will be very much around, first of all, it will feature in the problem statement, but then it will very likely fall under tomorrow's humanitarian prevention and response, because this is where we will be there. about how are we responding. But also it might be that this is under cyber and new technologies and innovation, so it could be also there. So that is a good, very question. Some people say this might be a cross-cutting area, but I'm also inviting here people who are much more into this and to Anka and Vittoria, if you have any added, but also Franz.
Yeah, I would really also underline that it's a cross-cutting subject that is related now. If you look at the three main strings to environmental realities, but also urbanization, it can be really related to that. I would also say it is then whether it will be figuring, and it then also is also substance related, because it has to be filled with substance. But I think there is certainly room in that framework for migration. Absolutely.
Maybe just a quick add-on to what Frank and Franz were saying. Currently, we're considering to look into, so obviously migration as a cross-cutting issue, but also looking at how the movement components, but especially national societies, could support states in implementing their commitments that by that time they would have taken through the 2 global compacts, in fact. And in highlighting exactly the messages that we wanted to bring in the global compacts that are not necessarily, or more or less reflected in the language of the global compacts. So for us, it would be what is our part and how can we support the commitments, but in line with our fundamental principles and with our policies on migration. I would think this would be how we currently see it, but please engage with us on this dialogue. I would now
just there has been a question by Laura related to autonomous weapons. It's still early thinking about autonomous weapons, but it will be most probably, as you suggest or ask, it will be under cyber and technology autonomous weapons. Yeah, absolutely.
And you have another question, Franz, from Frederick.
From Frederick about other IHL matters. Indeed, I mean, thank you, Frederick, for these questions. I mentioned already there are 2-3 smaller subjects already announced, like the commentaries on the Geneva Conventions. Then there is a challenges report. There are other topics in preparations. We will not be a major points, but you can probably consider them as some sort of housekeeping of the IHL file, things that have to be just done in the frame of the international conference. But we will also come out very soon with those topics, and of course to keep also a certain openness should other aspects arise now, also given the consultation phases that lie ahead.
I have another question or a previous question from Virginie on the French channel, who was asking us if it is foreseen to organize a vote on the resolutions, either electronically or by any other means, which would bring in more weight to the resolutions. Now, I think, and I also invite Frank and Franz to answer these questions. From our perspective, we think that the major win or one of the elements that make this conference so unique is that all the resolutions are actually adopted by consensus, and it was only 2 times in the history of the conference that resolutions needed to come to a vote. So this understanding between the national societies and the states on what the commitments should be, we find this of high value. But of course, I understand also in the sense of voting on resolutions might bring the or might raise the level of the commitments a bit higher and not consider them as the lowest common denominator. That is obviously one thing that needs to be very well pondered upon before we actually go that way. I don't know if Frank, you have.
No, I think what is important is that the general rules of the international conference is to go by consensus, and which is very important for the nature of the international conference, and we should try to keep consensus as much as possible. But that is up to the outcomes of the conference. We are always prepared for a vote if it's necessary. We always have everything in place for a vote, but as it's per the rules of procedures of the international conference, consensus prevails first of all. And we hope through this preparatory processes, being early with resolutions, having pre-negotiations with resolutions, having a prep-com on it, that we might be able to do this. What is also important is that resolutions is only one section of the conference. When you consider the objectives of the conference, it is also a platform to discuss areas where the discussion is in the center. And we should also concentrate on this part where we are discussing new emerging issues about new technologies, the impact of this, without having a resolution, where we might come up, where these might result in pledges, these discussions, or preparing for the next international conference, or something for us within the movement. There's two more questions, and I will take the first one, and then I'll leave to Franz the question from Dick. So first of all, from Gabriela from the Austrian Red Cross, she's asking, will there be an opportunity to discuss current topics with states, like, for example, the situation of NGOs in Hungary? As we know, the conference should not contextualize, so we will for sure not discuss specific situations. However, under the question about trust in humanitarianism, this is exactly what we need to discuss with states. What does this mean to be an international, to be a national society? How can the states and national societies work better together? How can we ensure that national societies can continue to work according to their mandate? We have several resolutions specifically on migration where it says that national societies have to be able to work with all migrants regardless of their status. So these are the areas where we will for sure have discussions. We will have discussions about how we can ensure that humanitarian work of national societies is not politicized, but also how we can strengthen societies, how can national societies be accountable and transparent and live up to their standards. So this is a little bit of the reinforcement of the auxiliary role, but there's two sides of it. There's not only rights, but there's also obligations, and I think we also need to discuss with states the obligations, what this means. I hope that answers your question, Gabriela, and then Franz.
I will take. Thank you very much, Dick, for this question, which is a very pertinent one, I have to say, and you know well that the compliance track absorbs a lot of energy as we speak by states and by the Federation and the ICRC. Forward-looking now for the international conference, there are, to my knowledge, no concrete asks or expectations of the state at this very moment. I think there is an interest to have initial thinking around cyber warfare, which you hear a lot in the news, and it has been proposed by already many stakeholders. And I think there should be an initial thinking around cyber warfare at the next international conference, but it's still early days to exactly pitch that topic in its let's say content. Then autonomous weapons is certainly a topic as well, without this being now expected by states. But we will around IHL very soon, let's say, inform and then also in the concept note more clearly, and then of course have also a dialogue with you around your suggestions and advice.
Thank you very much, Franz. I suggest, as long as there is no other questions around the thematic of the conference, and please, this is all just, very first thinking. However, this is the thinking we would like to put forward, and we don't know whether these titles will be there, but they are indicators in terms of in which direction we are going to go, and we are continuous working towards this direction. I would like now to go to the next slide, but please if there's questions coming in, we can still take them after the part. But I would like now to give the floor to Camilla and Celine to talk a little bit about the next steps and the engagement which we are foreseen and which we are also highly committed to.
Thank you, Frank. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Like it has been mentioned already before several times, engagement will be a very important part of the preparatory process of the next conference. So we're working on a plan in this lead-up period that so far has been divided into two phases. The first one, which pretty much concluded from March until June of this year, which aimed at really consulting some national societies about the big broad lines and themes of the next international conference, and of which the result is the slide that you saw previously. And you already heard the briefings from Anka and Victoria on those consultations. And then the second phase that will take place after the Standing Commission's meeting until pretty much November of 2019, where we aim at deepening the discussions and really expanding the number of actors that we engage with to contribute to a better, more dynamic and more relevant agenda of the international conference. That second phase will have three main targets. There will be national societies, states, and observers or external actors. We will conduct activities engaging all of these three as single groups or in combination. And we will also aim at obviously focusing on engaging youth, staff of the Federation and the ICRC, and as I said, a combination of these groups of national societies and states. There will be a series of different meetings. Some of them will build on existing ones, like, for example, the regional conferences, and the European conference that just passed is an example of that. Legal meetings, policy meetings taking place. So if you know of any meetings that engage, that bring together a number of national societies, please let us know so we can see, even if we can try and see how we can build some aspect related to the international conference in them. And there will be activities that will be created as a standalone events. We aim to do many of these activities here in Geneva because, some states and permanent missions are based here, but we also hope to do some of these activities in different regions. The calendar of activities is not finalized yet, and in any case will be pretty much a live document that you will be able to find in the website of the conference very soon. So please, we encourage you to check that very often to see the latest updates. The slide that you have in front of you outlines the objectives that we have for each of the actors or targets that we aim to engage with. So I'm not going to go through it, but you can see more or less what we aim at. And one thing that I would like also to highlight is that we also like to promote reporting. As you know, there's a commitment to report on the achievements, on the outcomes of the conferences. So we will build this into it, and this engagement also aims at increasing the reporting from states and national societies on their achievements. The next slide will show you calendar of milestones, which are mainly things that we have already taken place, and the deadlines, the statutory deadlines, mailing of elements, different convocations, etc., that will give you an idea of what is coming up. What we want to do is to, of course, fill this calendar with different activities that will be taking place. And again, we encourage you to check the website to find the latest updates. I think this is so far for the engagement. I don't know if Celine, you want to add anything, or you're okay? Okay. So.
Thank you very much. And there's immediately a question around the engagement. When would the joint preparatory meeting take place? I don't think we have a fixed date, but
we don't have a fixed date yet. But we aim so far to do that preparatory meeting next year around July. We will see if we have one before, but this is still to be confirmed.
One of the things what we are thinking here is to link this with the annual legal advisors meeting when many societies are in town anyway, and to then probably extend that for 1 or 2 days on such a preparatory meeting to link it there. But we have not fixed it, but yes, this is something we are looking into.
Maybe just to add on that, it will definitely, since this meeting we're foreseeing it to have it on the resolutions, this will necessarily be connected with the timeline. So basically it would make more sense to have it once the draft 0 of the resolutions will be there. So that's a bit the timeline that we're seeing, and that's why it would more or less fit with the annual legal advisors meeting, so that national societies and states have a concrete document that they can actually work on, and that would go into the draft, the official draft of the resolutions.
Good, thank you very much. I don't know whether there are any questions in terms of the engagement. Otherwise, we will come to an end. First of all, just to let you know, thank you very much for your active engagement on this one. There are still coming questions in, so I will continue talking while we're waiting here for the comment. And yes, how should we best provide feedback to you about topics now? So this is exactly what we're talking now about. Jane, you can see here there's an email address. There is the rcrcconference.org webpage. You can contact us individual. There will be, for instance, also the Asia Pacific meeting will be also where we will have engagement sessions, and you will soon receive the engagement plan, so you will can see there how to do this. But now at this stage, this is really the best way is sending us an email or to provide us this feedback. There will be also very soon the legal advisors meeting, I think beginning July of this year, where there will be the next major opportunity to be here all together in Geneva. Just also not only feedback on the conference, I think we also would like to have feedback on this webinar. Please let us know whether this is useful for you, whether we should do it differently, what we can improve. I apologize for the technical hiccups. And if you think this was so good and you want to see it again, first of all, this is recorded. So you can, on the rcrcconference.org, you can watch it there again. And secondly, if you still didn't have enough, you can also join us again this afternoon at 4 o'clock, where we are going to have a session in English and Spanish. So you're also highly all welcome to join there. You can also inform your friends and family members to join us there if you think that is a must-see. We'll say goodbye from my side and hand over to Franz.
I think there has been a question of Daniela from the Swiss Red Cross about the must-have themes. I think there will be already certain elements described in the concept note that should be carried forward, but there is not an exhaustive now list of must-have themes. that is now established, and that will be certainly later on be a consultation exercise and then a decision taking later on in the exercise. I would like to say also thank you on behalf of the other part of the co-chair of the JOC, and I hope it has been a bit useful, and looking forward to interact with you in the next future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody.